Hey there, welcome to the Guide to Surrogacy, the interviews. And in this series, we're going to be speaking to the people at the heart of surrogacy and the surrogacy journey. We've got egg donors, surrogates, clinicians, and people like that. The surrogacy journey is probably one of the most personal and selfless and misunderstood journeys that a human can have. So let's get to the heart of it and speak to people directly, shall we, and get their real experiences. Should we start? First up, we have Renna. Renna is an egg donor. That's an anonymous egg donor and a known egg donor. And she's also been a surrogate. She works quite high up in the organisation Surrogacy UK, which helped me have a child. And I met up with her recently at the Surrogacy UK conference. Shall we go? So without further ado, let's meet Renna. Yeah.
My name's Renna. I'm a mum to 3 children, and I'm married to Alex. I joined Surrogacy UK in 2018. Initially joined as a known egg donor, but that changed quite quickly. I did my first surro journey was straight journey, and I had my first surro baby in 2020. And then I did my second surro journey in 2023. I had Robin. And then I was a known egg donor at the end of 2023.
So did you start with surrogacy and then go down the egg donor route?
No, actually. So I knew after I'd had Iris, my last baby, I knew that I wanted to do something. And to be honest, I didn't really know anything about surrogacy. I didn't know kind of that you could do it in the UK. I knew nothing. But I'd happened to see an advert on TV about this organisation that matches recipients with donors. And I thought, oh, okay, that sounds amazing. And you could go down egg donation. And it was on my mind for a while. And then I thought my sister was struggling to conceive. So we did discuss whether or not I maybe would be her egg donor. But then she did get pregnant. So then, because the thought didn't leave me, I reached back in contact with this organisation in 2016 and said, look, I've completed my family. I'd really love to donate my eggs. And they got back to me instantly. And the woman, I remember saying, I know exactly who I want to match you with. You're very, very similar. They sent them a copy of my baby picture. And I think what the intended mother really liked was the fact that my baby picture looked like her baby picture. And I think that meant quite a lot to her. That's what she wanted. So I donated my eggs. And interestingly, that's when I met my very good friend, Gemma. So we both donated at the same time.
So first off, when you did the anonymous donation,
yeah.
What is that procedure like? What do you have to do to be a donor? Because from my perspective, we picked a name, and you don't know anything. We got a baby photo, we got that information, but we don't know who she is, where she is, what her name is, or anything like that, or even what she had to go through on our behalf. So I'd really like to understand what that procedure is.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I had to, they had a clinic in London. So as soon as this organisation matched me, so it's a little bit different to like an egg bank. This organisation are almost like the facilitators. So they facilitate in a meeting, but not a physical meeting, but a meeting between me and these recipients. When we were matched, I had to go to where their clinic was. So it wasn't a matter of, I would like to go to a clinic in Birmingham closer to me. They were in London. And I said I'd be willing to go there. So my first appointment, I turned up and it was there for nearly 4 hours. And it was scans, blood tests. The other thing that really made it really clear to me how important an egg donor's kind of health is I was treated like a complete VIP at that clinic. The minute I walked into the scan room, he was like, I'm going to check where your ovaries are. If I feel I can't get them, I won't get them. This isn't about you trying to extend your family. You're doing this to help somebody, and I'm never going to put your safety at risk. So I then had to take a blood test that let me know my AMH levels. And I have very high AMH levels. So
what does that mean?
Oh, okay. Now you're going to ask me what the I don't know what it means, as in I don't know what the AMH. So I don't know what the term is, but it's basically egg reserve. So there's no test that will let you know how viable somebody's eggs are, but you can find out what kind of egg reserve they've got. So as a woman gets older, her egg reserve will drop. So for me, my levels at age 35 were very high. So they felt that that was actually, even though I was a little bit older as a donor, they felt more comfortable knowing that they were hopefully going to get quite a lot of eggs. But because of that, the clinic said, we are going to have to really monitor you, because what we don't want to cause is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. We don't want you to get poorly from this. So they started me on a very low dose. So I had to wait for my period. And of course, it fell in New Year when nothing's really open, but I got all the medication ready. And I started injecting on day one injection a day. I wanted to do it myself because I couldn't bear somebody else giving me an injection. So I did it myself. And that injection is encouraging your follicles to grow. Then I had to start a second injection day 3, which is to stop me ovulating. And every 3 to 4 days, I was going to London to be scanned. And they were like, okay, let's have a look at your follicles. We need to lower the dose or we need to increase it. So I was monitored so carefully. And then I went for my final scan. I think it was day 10 of injecting. And they said, you are pretty much ready. We're going to call you and let you know the exact time you have to take your trigger shot tonight. And it's like by the minute. So I had this trigger shot. I think it was like 10:01 p.m. You inject, and then 48 hours later, you go to the clinic. And it felt a lot more clinical than I thought it would. I was really surprised. I knew how you retrieve eggs, but I didn't realise that it's actually a surgical procedure. So I had my gown, my hat on. Alex stayed in the waiting room. Then he came downstairs to where they do the retrieval. I went into the retrieval room, which is, I'm assuming, like, I've never had surgery, but I'm assuming it's like a surgical room. And the anaesthetist spoke to me and said, you're going to have a sedation, so you won't be put to sleep. But to be perfectly honest with you, I pretty much was asleep. I don't remember anything. They explained everything, and then they just said, oh, you're going to feel a little bit sleepy now. And the next thing I remember, I was waking up in recovery, and felt very, very sick.
Really?
I don't really drink. I've never like experimented with drugs or anything. So I think for me, it was like, I think my body was like, what has just happened? So they wouldn't let me leave for a while. Whereas when Gemma did hers, she like, jumped out of bed and, went for lunch, but I felt really poorly. But what made it really lovely was then the doctor came through and said, we've got 19 eggs. That's a really good number. Hopefully they're going to get some good blasts from that. I don't hear if they got blasts from those eggs, but what you do find out for me afterwards was whether or not they got pregnant.
You found that out?
Yeah, the clinic call you, but only if the recipients are happy to share that. So I got a call from the clinic in London I donated in the January, I got a call in the February to say that she had to wait and do a frozen transfer to match her cycle, and they were pregnant. And they had a little girl at the end of 2017. And then Boston Place called me again in 2020 to say that they'd had twin girls.
Wow.
So 3 girls under 3.
Wow.
So it was, it's incredible. And I ticked something to say only for that couple. And also that if they had any blasts left over, which I believe they do, that I didn't want them to be donated. They can be given to kind of like medical research, because I just wanted to know that it was that family, because of that genetic link as well. And obviously for my own children, I didn't want it to go to, a full embryo to go to lots of different families.
Yeah. Speaking as an IP that will never know, I'm going to get emotional now, never know their egg donor.
Oh. Don't, you'll set me off. You'll set me off.
Because we never get to thank her.
No.
And we don't know what she knows. So theoretically, it's interesting to hear. So she will know that she's helped someone have a baby girl. But we don't know anything else. And
no.
so it's for me, it's nice to be able to thank you on their behalf. Or difficult, this stuff, isn't it?
It's emotional.
It is.
And it means so much as well. And I think I actually did a session earlier on in my room. It's a conference all about kind of egg and sperm donation, and there were a few people on there that were messaging me in the chat saying, "I can't say this to my donor, so I want to say to you, thank you," because it is really difficult, and to make that decision, and so for me as well to go down that anonymous ID release, it is a difficult decision to make.
And is part of that agreement in 18 years when they come of age, they can come and find you? Have you had that conversation?
Yes. So with a donation now, and I think it's the case for sperm as well, you go and 18, they can have your full information. And my door will always be open. If they want to know anything about their genetic history, I'm there if they want to know anything. But if they choose to never want to contact me, that's also absolutely fine. I didn't go into it in the same way I went into surrogacy, where you've got that friendship and that lifelong friendship. I knew what I was doing. I had my eyes wide open. I know that this was anonymous, but I hope they get in contact, because I'm a bit nosy. And I'd like to meet the parents and meet the girls. But if they never do, I've made my peace with that, and that will also be okay.
That's really interesting and nice to hear, because you sometimes worry that that someone coming out of the woodwork in 18 years will disrupt and worry and destroy their lives or something. So the fact that you are positive and open to that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I actually think that would be quite selfish to be a donor and not be understanding of the fact that the center of everything, the most important thing in all of this, is the child born through that donation. They are the most important thing. And so I feel it's really important that they know, if they want, about their genetic history, that they've got that option.
So through doing anonymous egg donation and doing known egg donation, are there any massive differences, other than the fact that you have a connection with the people you're helping?
Yeah, I think I would never ever regret my anonymous donation. I'm so proud of it. There's 3 little girls that are in this world that wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for my donation. I think with a known egg donation, I think the difference is that Beatrix will always know who I am from birth, and she doesn't have any questions about her genetic history. And if she does, obviously her mum's there, her dad's there, I'm there. But I guess it's in maybe a little bit of a selfish way. I quite like the fact that I kind of get to see her grow. But then I suppose mine's a little bit different because I did carry her as well, so that adds another element to it. But yeah, I feel the same about both. I'm really proud about both. But yes, they are very different.
And is there a difference also between how your husband Alex and your children view the two relationships? Or I mean, it must be a big deal for them to get their head around.
The different relationships you mean between the anonymous and the known? Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think they think about the anonymous at all. They know, I've explained to them that there are 3 little girls in the world that we don't know. But I think because we're so heavily involved in the organisation, and because we have such good relationships with the team that we did Straight with and host, they adore seeing the Surro babies, but more like they're just seeing a family friend. They don't view her as a sibling at all. I think my son did say, "Oh, another girl," because he's got 2 sisters. But they just love seeing her. But they are really aware of the fact that, and we don't shy from that they are genetic siblings. We don't use the word sibling, but we do say it's important they recognise that there are genetics there.
Did your children have many questions about that process when you were first explaining to them what you were doing?
No, not really. I think children understand things far more than adults do. I remember when I first looked into donation, Nathaniel was at school and he drew this picture. He was really into The Incredibles, and it was like Mr. and Mrs. Incredible. In the middle, it looked like a load of eggs. And he was like, "Oh, this is a superpower, people sharing eggs." So he had that understanding of it. And because our youngest was 1 when I donated, she's now 9. So she's kind of grown up in this world of, I think she thinks every mother is an egg donor and surrogate. So she's grown up in this world of egg donation and surrogacy.
So occasionally, when the anti-sorrow people like lift their heads out of their holes, they might bemoan about the fact that it's unfair on children. From your family's perspective, would you say that it has caused them any disservice in any way?
It's enriched their lives. It's completely changed our lives. It's taught them about understanding, empathy, compassion. It's taught them about how lucky I was to have my three. And I think, yeah, the joy, I wish, I kind of, when I see the anti surrogacy or the anti, egg donation, I wish I could, show them snapshots of, these children's lives in general, because they love meeting up and they love getting together. And there's nothing negative that it's brought to our lives at all. Obviously, my last donation, I became very, very unwell. So I think that was a difficult time for us, but that didn't take away from what I was hoping to do. They still didn't regret me doing that, but it was obviously just very difficult for them to see me unwell.
And you're looking amazing now.
Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
Anyone thinking about doing egg donation, I'm assuming that you'd have to go through an organisation. You can't just be like, here you go. What kind of emotional support do you get going through that? I'm assuming you don't just get dumped into it.
No, and I've got no experience of what it's like in an egg bank, but I know when I went to the clinic when this organisation matched me, I had to have counselling. And I had to have what you call implications counselling, and to really consider what this would mean for me and my children and my husband, and to really consider how I felt about having there were children in the world that would share half of my genetics, and how did I feel about that. So no, absolutely not just let's take some eggs, off we go. And because it is it is an invasive surgery, it's making sure that I understand all the risks. And the first clinic, I had such a wonderful experience because they got it right. They knew what they needed to do for me. They treated me that, you are the most important person. So if this doesn't happen, excuse me, that's fine. And so I had such a great first experience. Unfortunately, not so much the second time, but I would still not. That wouldn't still put me off. If I was younger, I probably would still have continued with donating, because you can't just have one bad experience and then say, okay, well that's it.
Well, many people might.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Were there any surprises in the process? That obviously you went in, you did your research, so you maybe had a general idea, but through, I guess not because you've done donation and you've done the whole surrogacy. I guess we're looking at the whole picture from start to finish. Were there any big surprises that perhaps you weren't aware of?
Well, from the egg donation side of it, I think the biggest surprise is that the organisation that matched me, they kept me in regular contact via the clinic about what was happening at different stages. And I remember being at school, a lesson had just finished, and I glanced down at my phone.
Just to be clear, you weren't a student?
No, I wasn't a student. No, I'm a teacher. And I glanced down at my phone, and a message had popped up, and I could see it was from the organisation that matched me. And it just said, just want to tell you, wonderful news, your recipients are pregnant. And I think what surprised me in that moment was I burst into tears. And I think I didn't realise that it would be such a joyful message to receive. I thought I'd be like, oh, yay, they're pregnant. But it was a real kind of, oh my goodness me, like I knew that I think they'd had 10 rounds of IVF. I knew what they'd been through because you get a little bit of information about them. So for me, that surprised me how much it mattered, and how they'd actually got, they were pregnant, but they were getting towards their happy ending. And so, yeah, that really surprised me, the egg donation.
You made that happen.
Yeah. And there's the reason that those 3 girls are in the world is because I gave them a little something that they needed, and and they're here, and I'm sure incredibly loved by all their family.
And this is the thing that I think is important to get across with surrogacy messages generally is just how full of love the whole thing is.
Oh, it's completely. And, we only had to look at today with, sorrow partners, parents, friends, all talking about this amazing experience that they've had. And my mum and both of the intended mothers in both of our teams, my mum has a brilliant relationship with them both. In contact, sending pictures, our KD team. My mum has great relationships with so many people within the organisation because it's a ripple effect, isn't it? It's not just the people that are in it, it's everybody on the outside as well.
Definitely. So how does your mum handle the fact that would she describe herself as a grandparent to your KED situation, or how does that work for her? Because obviously people of a generation see family in perhaps a way that is a little bit outdated now, maybe.
Yeah, I think she's always been referred to as Great Aunt Denise.
Love.
So I'm Auntie Renna, and I'm also Beatrix's godmother. But my mum is great Auntie Denise. And my mum said that sometimes if she'll get a picture, of B, she might be like, "Wow, oh my goodness me, that's you as a little girl." Because obviously I don't remember myself back then, but obviously my mum does. But Mum said that's where it kind of ends. Of course, there's going to be some similarities. We share genetics, but Mum said there's no part of her that feels a grandmother role. She said I've got my grandchildren, but I do think because Joe has such a good relationship with my mum, that helps massively.
Yeah. So knowing that you've helped create these lives, has it made you feel different about how you see yourself and maybe the role of motherhood generally, or have you learned anything about yourself that perhaps you didn't realise?
That's a really good question. I guess I didn't. I always knew I was so lucky to have my three, but donating my eggs and surrogacies made me realise how incredibly lucky I really was to do that. And also to recognise that, it's not always an easy path to becoming a parent, and it can take loads of different shapes and forms. And I think for me, the biggest thing is I'd always been very much drummed into me because my dad's Greek and it's all about, being Greek and, and how important that is. And I always used to feel that genetics were really important. Mm-hmm. So I think it's also made me realise that genetics mean absolutely nothing. That actually it's who's there day in, day out with their children, who's there in the morning, who's put into bed on the night. It's all those things that are important parts, this kind of, blood thicker than water. It's irrelevant. It's about who's in your life. And I think that that's definitely made me see things differently. And I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she was saying, "You know what, Mummy?" She said, "If I found out tomorrow that you had to use somebody else's egg to have me," she said, "that wouldn't change how I felt." And I just said, "Oh, well, that's good." And I said, "What would it mean though?" She goes, "I definitely want to go and thank the lady though." And I thought that's such a lovely way from a child's perspective to look at it, that even my children now are recognising that mum, dad, whatever term you want to use for parents, it's about who shows up for you, who's there and who's loving you.
That's lovely. So you were saying that in with your three children that you helped create, how do you see yourselves? How do you see yourself in their future, kind of moving forward?
The egg donate, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if it was me, I'd be quite curious. So I think for me, I'm hoping I'll be there to answer any questions they've got. If they want to ask me why I did it, if they wanted to ask me anything about family, I feel like I'd be maybe a source of information. If they wanted to kind of meet my children, because there are genetic siblings there, that's the kind of role that I would think I would be hoping for. Would be, I'm here for information. If the parents wanted to know me and if they wanted any type of relationship, like a friendship, I'd be absolutely open to that. But I also don't want to set myself up for that to be a possibility and then they don't get in contact. So I'm also open to the fact that if they didn't and all they wanted to do was just ask me a question and then disappear, that's fine.
If someone was interested in becoming an egg donor,
Hmm.
what advice would you give them? And would you suggest anonymous or no egg donation as a route? Or let's rephrase that,
Yeah.
the positives of each perhaps, so that they go in fully informed.
Yeah, I think the positives for both of them is that I absolutely would, I do not regret doing what I've done. I think the biggest thing I would say is that make sure you do your research. So if you want to donate anonymously, just be aware of the fact that you won't have any information and you might never meet these children, and you definitely won't until they're 18. If you're looking to donate and you want it to be more of friendship and you want to get to know the people you're donating to, then you should absolutely explore known egg donation. But both, when people are deciding whether they want to do anonymous or known, it's about making sure you're doing your research. Really, when you go to the counselling, really thinking about the different routes and how you feel about that and what impact that's going to have on your life. And I mean, some people pick donors who are abroad, and that is sometimes completely anonymous. There's no ID release. So it's just about making sure that you've considered all of the different routes. For me, known and anonymous have brought me loads of joy. And I don't think to myself, oh, I wish I'd done known with those three girls, because they wouldn't be here. It would be something else.
Mm.
So I'm still very happy that I did that. But I think that it's just about doing your research, definitely.
Okay. Quite often when the anti-surrogacy people pop up, there's a lot of talk about it's degrading to women or abusive, or they're in it for the money. Could you confirm? Can you tell me, firstly, do you feel in any way, shape, or form a victim for what you're doing? And secondly, just how many thousands of millions of pounds have you made from doing this process?
Oh, thousands. I'll take you to my yacht later. I yeah, I am a very open person, and I find it really interesting where people feel that surrogates have no choice over what they're doing, that I'm a victim, that I'm vulnerable. I am an educated person. I chose to do this. I had full autonomy over what I want to do. There was no coercion. Um, I think people sometimes can't seem to get their heads around, but why? There always has to be kind of a motivation for it. And with egg donation and surrogacy, the motivation is purely because you want to help. And I don't think people realise that until they get into this world. But I also wish they'd take the time to actually listen. So I did an interview on Woman's Hour not that long ago, with our intended mother in our second team, and the comments that we had afterwards were absolutely horrendous. But I think the difficulty I found is I answered each and every one, educated, explained why, I wanted to do this. Some people don't want to hear. They've already made their minds up. They don't want to listen. But I will continue to educate and continue to share my opinions, because if it changes one person's view, then that's really important to me. Some people will say to me, "Oh, I can never do it," and I say, "Don't." If you don't want to do it, I'm not handing you an application form. I'm just telling you this is what I've done. I had full support from my husband, from my family. I am capable of making my own decisions, and I find it very frustrating where people feel that they can make decisions over your own body. And sometimes it feels a little bit like, well, you can do whatever you want with your body. Oh, but as long as I agree with it.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really frustrating for me, because it's my body. If I want to do something, then I'm going to do it. And I'm not a victim. I'm not vulnerable. I've made no money from it. I'm doing it because now I've done it twice, and obviously with the donation as well, I can see that it is just such a beautiful thing to be involved in.
Love that. One of the comments I've heard from a reasonably close family member was, "I could never give up my own baby." What was going through your head when the baby you had was presented to the parents?
Oh, you bottle that feeling, hey. I always say to people from the point of conception, or even before then, she's never mine. And my surrogate baby that was born through host was never mine. It was this joy of being able to give the baby back to parents. It's never giving a baby up. You go on this path together in this journey, and I had the most horrendous sickness with B, and I felt so poorly. We had her during lockdown. It was a home. It was just the most incredible experience. But you become so close to these people. It's not this transactional, handing a baby. It's watching your friends meet their baby for the first time. We're in such a privileged position as a surrogate where you actually get to witness people falling in love with their child. Apart from a midwife or somebody, performing a C-section, no one gets to see that. And it was just the most amazing thing. And to be honest with you, it was a complete relief, not just from the pain, but also from, oh my God, I did it. Like, she's here, she's safe, she's in the arms of her mum and dad. Like, my job is done.
Sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always say, God, if you could bottle that. And also, I didn't do this to have another child of my own. If me and my husband wanted to have another child of our own, there were far easier ways than stealing someone else's child. And just that feeling of those 9 months, there it is. There's the reason that I spent my head over a bucket or a toilet. They're the reasons that I couldn't play on the floor with my children. It's all worth it. Every stretch mark, every all the the weight that you put on, everything, all the difficulties that you go through. It's worth it because you get to see this brilliant moment.
Look what you've done.
Yeah, and also look what we all did, because that was really important to me as well. My husband in a lot of the pictures, he's there holding my hands, towards the end, and my children meeting baby afterwards. That was really important to me. That I did it. It was my dream, but my goodness, they came along for that roller coaster. And so it was about, look what we've all done together. Because for me, I couldn't do it without my family.
People don't often consider the sacrifice that the partner and the kids have to go through, because you're effectively being shared, aren't you?
Oh, definitely. And there was a really interesting point. So I had Beatrix in June of 2020. We were supposed to go on holiday in the summer, but obviously the world's shut down. So Centre Parks opened for a little bit, and we were like, right, we're going to go to Centre Parks. I remember playing table tennis with my middle daughter, Scarlett, and we were chatting. And I did something and laughed and fell over. And she looked at me, she went, "Oh, you're back." And I was like, oh, I didn't realise how much of me was being sacrificed to do something for somebody else. Like, you've missed me because I haven't been present.
Wow. Is there anything that you could say to IPs who are trying to make themselves more attractive to other people? Is there anything that you look out for specifically, or how do you choose people that you're going to help?
It's a really good question. And I think all teams that we've helped have all been very, very different. I remember speaking to our first team, and I'm not sharing it. I can share this because she said I could. It's not in confidence. And I met her, and she said, "Oh, I just don't think we're ever going to get picked. My husband's so grumpy." And like, we'd laugh about, like, him being a northerner. And I just thought, but actually, I'm looking for authentic people. I'm looking for people that are who they are. Whatever you do, never ever change who you are. You can't keep that up for long anyway. It's not about the person that's shouting the loudest. That's never been something that I've been pulled towards. I've been pulled towards genuine, honest, open. I think if you have had a really difficult journey to surrogacy, as a lot of people have for lots of different reasons, I think making sure that you've dealt with that before you join the organisation, as in making sure that for a surrogate's point of view, you don't feel like their whole happiness depends on you, that if this doesn't happen for whatever reason, it's kind of on your shoulders. You know that you're going to meet people that have had really traumatic time to get to this point, but it's about being able to be myself with people. I get quite drained kind of go into socials and I need just that little bit of time, and it's being with people that know that I need to take a little bit of time out, maybe I'm going to be a little bit quiet, that intended parents are going to see me in probably the most vulnerable situation I could ever be in, giving birth, no clothes, and you want to be surrounded by people that you trust and that you can. So I want to, with people that I can genuinely, I don't have to put on a facade. I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not. So if you're quiet and you're reserved, there is somebody that will be something that they are looking for. It's not about trying to be this perfect shining example of IPs. They don't exist. And a perfect shining example of a surrogate doesn't exist. We're all different. And, when I make an offer, I'm always like, they might say no.
Yeah. And from an IP perspective, that's a bit bonkers.
Yeah.
We don't think like that.
Yeah.
Because from an IP perspective, the surrogate has the power to make or break our lives. And so I'm talking to Gemma earlier, she'll say, oh, there's a few surrogates waiting. They're eager to get started, but they haven't. And that was hard to actually hear.
Yeah, I think, and it's really, because I always think it's really good for people to also make sure they've got their deal breakers. I think it's so easy to want to say yes. I understand that completely, but my concern is with that is that if you say yes to kind of any surrogate, what is that going to mean down the line? So if you do a fantastic GTK, brilliant, but if they start to be little red flags and actually maybe this isn't the person for us, it's really hard. We ended our second team after a year. It's really, really hard, but I think you've got to stay true to yourself. And I always say, when you do get that offer, make sure you read through the profile. I always put like in big bold things that, my deal breakers are, like, for example, I'm vegan and I'm not going to change my diet. And someone might look at that and be like, oh, I don't want her to be our surrogate. So it's about being like true to yourself. If that's something that would bother you, then I'm not the right person for you.
And the end of a team doesn't mean the end of hope.
Absolutely not. And there used to be this kind of feeling of we end a team or we say no to a surrogate, we're blacklisted. Actually, I would look at IPs and think, you really know what you want. You're not just taking an offer from anybody. You're actually really thinking about, I don't think this is the right person for us. And I would look at that in a really positive way.
You were talking about if you're quiet and you're shy, there'll be
Yeah.
people out there for you. Obviously, they need to find each other.
Yeah.
So being part of an organisation like SUK is probably the only way that they're going to find each other. Would that be right? I mean, if you aren't out there and you aren't loud and waving and shouting for attention, how do you get it?
Really good point. I'd say the first thing is build up your community, your tribe of friends, whether they're IPs or surrogates. Get that really secure. And I would say try and use the members hub as much as you possibly can. It's obviously newer. When I joined, it didn't exist. Make sure you update your diary, comment on other people's. Online socials, if you're thinking, actually, I'm too overwhelmed in a busy social. Our online social started during lockdown and I believe saved us all. Every Saturday night we were like, yes, we get to see like our friends again. It was incredible. Online socials are a great thing to do, the members hub, and just try to make sure you've got a balance between your SUK life and your life. Don't burn yourself out. So maybe do, one face-to-face social a month and an online. Update your diary, just kind of make sure that you're still keeping up to date with everything. But if you go in everything every weekend because you want to be seen, because you are quiet, you're going to burn yourself out, and that's not sustainable.
And are there any final thoughts that you might have, or any part of your journey in any of your journeys that perhaps you haven't talked about, or you don't often get a chance to say, that you might want to just round this up potentially?
Yeah, I don't want to end anything on a negative, but I think my final no-neg donation didn't go well. And I think what I've learned from that is never be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, well, why are we doing it this way? So when I had Robin, because I was geriatric, there was always consultants saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I would always ask the questions, why? Why do I need to do that? Well, where's the medical evidence for that? And I think with my egg donation, I should have asked more why questions. Why am I on such strong medication? Why do I feel like this post-retrieval? But I think I put a lot of faith in clinics and in what I was being told. And I think in hindsight, it's just always making sure you question with the support of your team. And that's a really important thing. So in both my sorrow journeys and with our final KED, we have the most incredible teams because they always had my back. And they were always there to ask the questions. Yeah, Rena's saying why? There wasn't a them and us. We were going into each appointment united. And I think that's really, really important that you work together as a team. It's not that you're going against medical advice. I would never promote that. But you're making sure you ask all the questions that you need to and just not go kind of blindly into something. Because I had such a positive first experience of egg donation, and not so much the second time around. That's what was missing. It was me asking the questions.
And listening to your body as well.
I think that, trust in yourself and trust that kind of that gut feeling that you've got.
Well, there's a great place to end.
Thanks so much, Rena, for taking the time to speak to me. It was fascinating and actually a little moving, in case you hadn't noticed at one point. Speak to you next time on Guide to Surrogacy.